Okay, and again, this is an event put on by the City of Glenarden to learn more about redistricting and what the impact is to our residents. Again, we have a distinguished panel joining us. We have Tracy Thompson from the League of Women Voters from Prince George's County. We have a board member, Shayla Adams Stafford, representing District 4, which is the district that Glenarden is in. And we will also have Council Member Jolene Ivey joining us. She will be speaking from the county's perspective. I also want to take this opportunity to introduce the rest of my colleagues on the City Council. We have Council Vice President Angela Ferguson on the line. Okay, we also have Councilman James Herring representing Ward 1.
Hello, everyone.
Councilman Maurice Hairston representing Ward 2.
Hello, everyone. How y'all doing?
And Councilwoman Kat Guillaume. Says hi. Okay. Go ahead, Kat.
I'm sorry, I just want to say hello, everyone. Sorry.
Okay, great. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. I do not have a waiting room on, so people can join as they come in. So let's go ahead and get started. Let me first introduce Tracy Thompson. As I mentioned, she is with the League of Women Voters. She moved to Prince George's County just 4 years ago, so she's relatively new to the area. She lives with her boyfriend of 9 years. They purchased a home in Bowie, and together they have 3 adult children. They love to go birding on the weekends, and she joined the League of Women Voters of Prince George's County in 2021. And she also joined the League of Women Voters Maryland Redistricting Advocacy team. So she is the right person to be speaking with us about that topic. She's new to the league, but she's working with very experienced leaders who are guiding her well. She was a public school teacher for 21 years, but now works as a customer support representative for a small company in Columbia. Thank you, Tracy, for joining us. So let me go ahead and get your presentation up. Okay, great. And again, just a reminder, if everyone could mute themselves, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Fareed, for this opportunity. As she said, I'm working with the League of Women Voters for Prince George's County, but I'm also serving with Beth Huffnagel from the League of Women Voters Redistricting Advocacy Advisory Committee, and I'm very happy to be here. Next slide. I'm so sorry, Councilwoman, they won't auto, thank you. Our presentation has 5 sections: the census and redistricting, history of gerrymandering in Maryland, Maryland's redistricting process, key Maryland results from the 2020 census, and ways to support your community. Let's dive into the census and redistricting. Every 10 years, the US makes an effort to count every resident living in the country. The census is mandated by the Constitution and was originally used for apportionment to determine the population of each state so that delegates could be apportioned to the US House of Representatives for each state. The census figures are also used for the redrawing of election districts within each state, which is redistricting. These election districts include congressional, state legislature, and county districts as well. Sorry. The changes in population affect the resources that states and counties receive from the federal government. We're talking over $600 billion. Population changes also affect our representation at the federal, state, and county level. Redistricting is so important because where the district lines are drawn matters for services, education, and community infrastructure. We only get this opportunity to redraw our district lines once every 10 years. Redrawing district lines has an enormous impact on libraries, parks, schools, and social services. These are the core reasons for communities to engage in census counting activities and the redistricting process. Who represents your community is key to obtaining the resources and policies that your community needs. Next slide, please. People move, babies are born, district populations change over time. The two graphs illustrate how lines have to be redrawn to keep the districts equal in size. Next slide, please. The following criteria should be used in redistricting: equal population, just like the previous slide demonstrated, minority representation, not drawing the lines to disadvantage minority groups, contiguity, the definition is up there, but what it means for redistricting is that communities should be kept together as much as possible. For example, don't draw a district line right down the middle of a neighborhood, dividing that neighborhood. Compactness, is the district as compact as it can be? Or does it have a strange shape? Was the map drawer trying to include or exclude anyone? And communities of interest. For example, a farming community, a fishing village, and a college town will all have different needs, and each would benefit from not being split apart. Next slide, please. Now we will examine the history of gerrymandering in Maryland. Here's the definition of gerrymander. Unfortunately, Maryland ranks among the worst in the nation for how we draw our congressional and legislative district lines. We're going to elaborate on that further. Next slide, please. Here are Maryland's current congressional districts. Look closely at District 3, that purple district almost in the center there. See how it snakes around District 7, that gray district. See how it snakes around District 2, that green one, and District 4, that orange one. In some places around District 2, parts of District 3, that purple one, are barely touching each other. Next slide, please. In the 2011 redistricting process, 174,000 Marylanders needed to change congressional districts based on population changes because people moved or babies were born. Can you guess how many were actually moved to different districts? Was it 200,000, 500,000, 1 million, 1.5 million? Make a guess. Next slide, please. The correct answer is D. This is a textbook example of gerrymandering. 1.5 million were reassigned. All of those reassignments in the electoral districts in 2011 were not based just on population shifts. Next slide, please. With that history, let's take a look at Maryland's redistricting process. Maryland has 2 redistricting commissions, which makes it a little confusing. There's the first one, the MCRC, the Maryland Citizens Redistricting Commission, and that consists of non-elected, non-lobbyist voters. And then there's the LRAC, the Legislative Redistricting Advisory Commission, and these are Maryland General Assembly elected leaders plus a neutral chair. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. The MGA will start creating a congressional map. Oops. I'm so sorry. Can you go back one? Sorry. The Maryland General Assembly will start creating a congressional map for the seats in the U.S. House of Representatives in December 2021, and they will start with the map that the LRAC comes up with. The MGA will adopt a legislative map for Maryland state senators and delegates in February 2022, and they will start with the MCRC map. So already the two commissions are starting with different maps, so it will be interesting to see how this is going to blend together in the end. And now I'm ready for the next slide, sorry. Here is the base map that the MCRC has come up with. This is just a start, just a first draft, but notice how districts snake and bend much less than the current district. As the commissions release their proposed maps, I encourage you to study them carefully to see how your community will be impacted by the new district lines that they come up with. Next slide, please. Here are the key Maryland results from the 2020 census. Allegheny and Somerset counties and Baltimore City lost population. Montgomery, Frederick, Howard, Charles, and Prince George's counties gained population. Next slide. The pie chart shows the racial identity of Marylanders based on the 2020 census. Less than half of Marylanders identified as white for the first time. Next slide. What can you do to support your community? Next slide. The best way to support your community is to become an activist and make your voice heard. Talk to your elected representatives. Speak up at the Redistricting Commission meetings. Councilwoman Fareed has these links and she can send them to you later, but she's also recording the show so that you'll have access to them afterwards. Next slide, please. Here's some more links. If you don't know where to find your elected representatives, your delegates, you can find them here. There's some key League of Women Voters material that will be handy for you if you're having any discussions with any elected representatives. Please use these as a resource. And the next slide, please. That's it. Thank you so much for your time. Beth Huffnagel is also here to answer any questions that you have about redistricting. And you can also email her or myself if you have any specific questions later. Thank you so much, Councilwoman Fareed.
Thank you so much, Tracy, for that. That was so informative. I think just kind of getting plain information like this really helps us put into perspective how redistricting impacts us, and even more so how the census impacts us. We know that in 2020 it was a challenge to get those census forms completed, but generally there's hesitation on many people's parts to complete the census. But I hope now you all understand the importance of what that data means and how it's going to be used for our community. So I will now open it up for questions for Tracy and Beth. If you have questions, just feel free to unmute yourself.
Woman Fareed, this is Councilman Herring.
Go ahead.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's, I'd just like to know. So gerrymandering isn't illegal, is it? It's just.
Well, that is a great question. Beth Huffnagel has much more experience than I am. I'm going to let her answer it in more detail, but I believe the answer is no, it is not illegal. Beth?
Depends on what kind of gerrymandering you're talking about. If you are talking about racial gerrymandering, The Voting Rights Act is still in full force, but Section 2, everybody heard Section 5 got taken down by the Supreme Court, but Section 2 still applies to everybody, not even down in the county and the city district level. But partisan gerrymandering, the Supreme Court said that was fine, go for it.
Okay, so I mean, as citizens, you know, how much change can we affect when it comes down to redistricting if they're trying to save their seats? You know, politicians trying to save their seat.
It's a great question. I would say be vocal. Contact your elected representatives, go to these redistricting commission meetings and let your voice be heard. Do it in writing, do it verbally, as many ways as you can.
Great, thank you.
Oh, sure.
Councilwoman Fareed, may I ask a question?
Hi, this is Jolene Ivey. I just wanted to break in for a moment. I was having so many technical difficulties. I'm now using my son's phone. You might notice my name is not Delegate Jolene Ivey, and he's driving me, so I'm being safe. But I just wanted to come on and say hello. I don't know exactly where you are in the discussion, so I'll listen for a moment and find out where I am so I can respond appropriately.
Councilwoman Fareed, can you hear me?
I can hear you now, yes.
I can hear you, and I was on mute. I was just saying to Councilwoman Ivey that we're at the end of the League of Women Voters session, and they're doing a Q&A, so you'll be up in just a few minutes. Okay.
Got you. Thank you.
And Councilwoman Guillaume, Ms. Smallwood had her hand up. I was going to acknowledge her question. Sorry, Ms. Smallwood.
Yes, I have a question and I have a follow-up question. My first question is it true that they are using the 2010 census to draw the districts? And if there are they waiting to get the 2020 data to insert it into the map?
Sorry,
Could you
my
hear me?
understanding is that they're using the 2020 census information, but Beth would know the details better than I would.
Or, of course, Tracy is right. They are using the 2020 numbers. They have been out since October 1st. And these are the ones that have been adjusted for Maryland's anti-prison gerrymandering, where they take the incarcerated people and place their residence at their last known home address, so that that's where the resources go, is obviously where they're needed. So they might have been using the 2010 before that, but after October 1st, everybody's using 2020.
Thank you.
Okay, Councilwoman Guillaume.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I just had a quick question, and I'm not sure if, hopefully you know it, but just in case you don't, I just wanted to put it out there for Tracy or maybe Beth. Tracy, when you showed the map, specifically where you saw the lines of District 3, was there any justification given to it being split up that way?
Beth will be able to answer the history of that question much better than I would. I am so sorry.
Not a problem.
Maybe we can go back to the map. Maybe
Yes.
that would help everybody.
This map,
No, I believe she wanted the other one.
the first one.
There you go.
Are you all talking about the Councilmatic District 3?
I'm sorry, whoever asked the question again, do
Yes.
we have the correct slide?
On my screen, Okay, I see correct. Yes, that one where the purple, where the 3 is split up between the 2. Yes, that's it. That one.
This is from 2010. And we are told now, of course, I wasn't working on this issue then, but historically, there's very little written archival information on how they were selected. There was a Democratic governor, Democratic House of Delegates, Democratic Senate. Basically, they got together, they agreed on what the congressional maps were with, I'm told, heavy thumbs from the current congressman on what they would like to see, who they would like in their delegate, in their district, what their donors they would like, and the type of voters they would like. So that's how this came about. And that is the definition of partisan gerrymandering. Perfectly legal. Still is. Was then, still is.
Wow, thank you.
Councilwoman Ivy, did you have something to add on to that question? I thought I saw you trying to come up with you.
No, I just was unclear about what the question was referring to. So I was just trying to get clarity. Apparently it's the congressional district, not the councilmatic district. 3. Right.
So I do have a question. Is redistricting required at all levels of government? So I know it's required at the for these congressional districts, but as an example, you know, like are counties required to use census data to redistrict? Are municipalities required to use data to redistrict?
That is an excellent question. Beth is nodding her head yes, and since I am fairly new to the league, I will turn to Beth for that.
It goes all the way down from the Congress down to the bottom. And the only reason it doesn't affect our federal senators is they're all elected at large. There is no individual districts for senates, or it would affect them as well.
Okay. And of your knowledge of Maryland municipalities, do you know of any municipalities that kind of look at census data and redistrict? I know that Glenarden, we don't do that, but I'm not sure if there are other municipalities that do kind of look at the data to determine, you know, maybe ward lines or however they have their representation represented.
I actually just came from a meeting of the Howard County Redistricting Councilmanic Commission. And then the charter requires them to redo and look at the district lines, and they have to rearrange them so that they have within a 10% spread of population. So they have to get close to plus or minus 5% of population in each of those districts. And of course, the league encourages them to get a fresh look and start with communities of interest, not with the 2010 district lines.
Okay. Let me see if there's any more questions.
It's Councilwoman Fareed, Councilman Hearn again. One other question: How closely does what the LRAC and the MRAC match when they bring those two maps together? Do they vary significantly, or does the MRAC follow what the LRAC has done? Or they just look at who's in place and whose position they want to save?
That is an excellent question. I have my own personal opinion, but I will defer to Beth for the League of Women Voters opinion. But it is a concern because they've got 2 independent commissions going on, or 2 commissions going on at the same time. And I'll turn it over to Beth.
We were just talking to one of the legislative caucuses, and I was kind of surprised that they had even seen the Maryland Citizen Redistricting Commission maps, because that's Governor Hogan's maps. And make no doubt about it, the people in charge of the congressional and the legislative maps, the ones making the decision, is the Maryland General Assembly, period. That is who's going to make the decision.
So my personal fear is that the LRAC's commission maps will be more, they'll have more weight than the Governor Hogan's commission, the MCRC commission.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. If we have more questions, we can take them at the end. I do want to turn it over now to Councilwoman Jolene Ivey to talk about redistricting at the Prince George's County level and give us an update on that. Before,
Okay.
oh, sorry. I wanted to introduce Councilmember Jolene Ivey. She was elected to her first four-year term on the County Council in November 2018, representing Council District 5. She previously served in Annapolis as a delegate representing District 47 in the Maryland House of Delegates. Ivey was elected by her colleagues to serve as chair of the Prince George's County Health Delegation. A former broadcast journalist with a master's degree in journalism from the University of Maryland, Councilmember Ivey was a co-founder of Mocha Moms, a support group for at-home mothers of color, and helped grow it into a national organization. Councilmember Ivey was named one of Daily Record's top 100 women of Maryland in 2016 and was the recipient of the Maryland State NAACP Kwasi Mfume Excellence in Advocacy Award. Among Councilmember Ivey's priorities on the County Council are children and their families, the fight for environmental justice, and making sure residents of Prince George's County and District 5 receive speedy, effective, and courteous services from the county government. Thank you, Councilmember Ivey.
Thank you, Erica, so much for hosting this event and for including me. I think it's really useful for people to understand the process of redistricting, and it's an important part of our American democracy. So I'm happy to be able to be here today to talk about redistricting, especially on the council level. And you all were already talking about the delays caused by the pandemic, and also the Trump administration's, their delays that they dragged out so that we didn't have the census data we needed in a timely manner. And that all has a trickle down effect. The way, though, it is playing out on the Prince George's County Council, first of all, the thing to know, and you probably already talked about this, but our county has grown since 2010, since the last time we did the census. So now we have a population of over 968,000. It was 864,000 roughly in 2010. So we've grown. And each of the districts should have, in theory, the exact same number of people in it, which would be 107,641. And with that deviation that the league was just referring to, plus or minus 5%, our redistricting commission tried to keep it tighter than that. I believe they were working to keep it closer to 4%. And as a result, the District 5 boundaries remain unchanged. They're exactly as they were. And our deviation was so negligible that there was no point in changing it. So in 2010, we had a population of 94,712 in our district. And in 2020, we have 107,127. And the ideal number of people in a district is 107,641 in Prince George's. So 107,127 is close enough for government work, as they say. So our district lines did not change. There were some districts that had small changes. District 3 and District 4 had some changes, and also District 6 and 7. Just very small changes each time, trying to keep precincts together, places of interest, as they were saying, together, and those kinds of things. District 1 and 2 had 2 precincts in Adelphi that were moved from District 1 to District 2. And for District 3, they had 1 precinct of 2,205 people in Glendale were moved from District 3 to District 4. And the good thing about that is that it ended up uniting almost all of Glendale into District 4. So those are some of the changes. District 6 and 7, there were 2 precincts, which is a little over 6,000 people. And this not only fixed the population shortfall in District 7, but it also fully unites the 2 precincts that form District Heights. And the commission voted unanimously 3-0 to adopt their plan, and they submitted it to the council on September 1st. And the way it works here, they submit their plan, and assuming that the county council agrees with their plan, we'll vote for it and it'll become law at the end of November. So that is the, how things would work. Now it is a law, so it is possible that council members, out and change some things, but we'd have to stay within that deviation because you don't want to create a constitutional problem. It really should be 1 person, 1 vote. And that is how this map should work. I'm pretty sure, I'd say, without having discussed this with colleagues, that this map will be the map. One reason why the commission decided to stick closely, I wasn't around for this. There were a lot more changes made 10 years ago by the commission, and the council just ripped up their map and started over. And they didn't want to go through all that. So they pretty much stuck with the lines and just made the changes that they needed to make so that, they stayed within the math. So the new map will take effect with the 2022 regular election cycle, which is rapidly approaching. And so I think that's most of the update for the council is very few changes and none for the district I'm in. And if you're interested, the commission members are Reverend James Johnson. He was the chair, and this was his first year on the commission. Dr. Charlene Dukes, who you might know is a former president of the Prince George's Community College, and Honorable David Harrington, who used to be on the council and is now running the Chamber of Commerce. The person who consulted for the group was Dr. Nathaniel Pursley. He's from Stanford Law School. And Rosalind Pugh was the counsel to the Redistricting Commission. So I think they did a good job, and they had the citizens' interests at heart. And I personally am fine with the work that they did and plan to vote for it. I don't know if there are any questions.
I don't see any questions in the chat, but if anyone has some questions, we can take them now.
Yes, Councilwoman Fareed, is Councilman Herring again. How you doing, Councilwoman Ivey?
Hey, how are you?
Okay, question. So if all the councilman districts are equally divided, are the resources in the county equally divided? Because it doesn't seem like the resources are equally spread across the county, the districts equally.
It's interesting that you say that. It's kind of like with my children, I tell them they get what they need. They don't necessarily get even resources. So if there's a part of the county that needs more police, then it seems that they should get those resources more than an area that doesn't need as much policing, for example. So I think that it's fair to say that given the county's budget, which is around $4 billion. And I want you to compare this for a moment with DC's budget, which is over $16 billion. And we have 900 and some thousand people. They have 600 and some thousand people. So we have a third more people and a quarter of the money. I think we do an amazing job of providing the services that we do provide. And the pie just needs to be bigger. We need to find ways to bring in more money for the county. But I do believe that it is fairly distributed according to the needs of each area of the county. So if there's something specific that you want to see different, I'd love to hear about it and see what we can do.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for that, Councilwoman Ivey. That was very informative. What I was most surprised by was to find out that there's, neighborhoods that actually aren't all together in one district. Like you mentioned, Glendale is coming more together. So I think that's, the matter of, I'm going to mess this up, contiguous, keeping the cities contiguous in the line. But I would imagine if you're trying to balance that with the population, that might not always be possible. So it's interesting to kind of see all those elements that come into play in making these decisions.
No, absolutely.
Okay, so thank you very much.
Thank
Okay.
you. And thanks for putting this on. I think you've done a really great job.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so let's go on. We're going to have School Board Member Shayla Adams Stafford representing District 4 up next. Let me introduce her. Shayla Adams Stafford is the CEO of Adaptive X, a professional development and software company that focuses on culturally responsive teaching and learning through the lens of racial equity. Her company trains educators and school leaders in over 20 districts across the US and are considered national leaders in this field. Through her software, Shayla hopes to bring about assessment equity by putting the power of adaptive testing in the hands of K-12 teachers. She has won several pitch and hackathon competitions and most recently was a finalist in the International Pen Milk and Business Plan competition, which led to Adaptive X being featured on NASDAQ Trade Talks. Before becoming an entrepreneur, Shayla served as a national board certified teacher and coach for over 10 years and has been recognized by the White House for her achievements in project-based learning. Shayla is also the CEO and founder of Remix Education, a 501c3 nonprofit organization that has provided more than 200 students in Maryland, North Carolina, Georgia, and Washington, D.C. with positive youth development programming. Shayla graduated from Wellesley College in Massachusetts and received a master's degree in teaching from Duke University. Shayla was just recently elected to represent the residents of District 4 as a member of the Prince George's County Board of Education, Maryland's second largest school district and one of the largest in the nation. I am so thankful to have Shayla, who I consider to be a friend and a neighbor, here with us this evening to talk about redistricting and how it's impacting our schools. Thank you, Shayla.
Thank you so much for having me. Erica, I didn't know if we'd be able to share those slides that I sent, or do you want me to share them from my screen? I can, okay.
Thank you.
Okay, no problem. All right, let's make sure this comes up. Give me a second. Oh, I think I need to be the co-host and then I can share it. All right. Okay. All right, so hello everyone. I just have a short presentation here, and I want to just kind of preface this by saying that, I am your elected representative on the Board of Education, and I'm so happy to serve in that role. But I want you to know that I am not, the person that's in charge of redistricting within the school district. So to be clear, Dr. Goldson and her team, they are in charge of the day-to-day operations, and my job as a board member is to provide governance and oversight and bring the concerns of community members to the school system. And so, if you have very specific questions about your school and some of the sort of factors here that are going to contribute to redistricting, I just encourage you to please email me. I'll put my information in the chat, and I will take those concerns back to Dr. Goldson. So I just wanted to start off with that. So, in thinking about redistricting and PGCPS, what this is termed within the school system is the Comprehensive School Boundary Initiative. And so they've hired an outside group, XYZ is the name of the group, and they are bringing an impartial analysis of our current boundaries, our feeder patterns, and they're bringing in the voices of community members through various forms, and I'll share with you some ways that you can make your voice heard, to really think about how we can have balanced utility throughout the county. I'll talk a bit about how we have some schools that are over-enrolled, some schools that are under-enrolled, and so the goal of this boundary initiative is really to do a wide-scale assessment of where those lie, using census data and that information to make some decisions. And so this process began last year in fall of 2020, and it's going to conclude this upcoming winter in February 2022. So the first phase of this work really has been spent, on engagement over the summer. They held 3 community engagement sessions that were, pretty lengthy. They held them in English and in Spanish, and invited community members to give some thoughts on the boundary proposals, giving scenarios for stakeholders, which I'll share with you all in a moment, where you can look at some of the possible boundary scenarios. And then the next phase of this work is really about the boundary change approval process, and then the boundaries actually going into effect. So I want to talk about 4 kind of key parts here that go into sort of the decisions behind how school boundaries are chosen. So it starts off with I'm going to start off by talking about past and future growth. Okay, just not right now. New schools, school consolidation, and some of the challenges with utilization. Just give me 1 second. My toddler, she knows when I'm on Zoom calls, it seems like. And I think that she just feels like, she's got something to say about this. So I just want to excuse her in advance. So I'll go over some of these components here. So past and future growth, as Councilmember Jolene Ivey just stated, our enrollment in PGCPS has grown, and it's projected by the year 2024, we'll have gone from over 136,000 students to 143,000 students by 2024. And so this is really going to be important for us to revisit boundaries within the school system, because the last time this happened was in 2008. Okay, so that's a very long time ago. And so it's important that we have this critical analysis due to the growth and the fact that it hasn't been done in so long. Additionally, we have these 12 planned capacity projects, which include the 6 new blueprint schools, which here in District 4, we know Kenmore Middle School is one of those proposed schools that are going to be part of the blueprint. And those schools are going to add about 9,000 new seats by the school year 2026-2027. And those new seats are going to accommodate the new and growing student population. So I want to just share in the chat, if you haven't had a chance to check out Blueprint Schools, this is where you can actually sign up for the Blueprint newsletter, you can learn more about the projects. You can find out, what is the status of the P3 projects that we have happening here. And if they're on track to being built on time. That's the biggest thing that we're, wanting to happen, because we desperately need those schools. So that I dropped that in the chat if you want that information. So the third point I talked about was school consolidation. So we have some older school facilities that have, really gone past their building lifespan, but they're still being in use. So, part of this boundary initiative is going to really find out where, what are those schools that are being underutilized, and find out how can we transition those students to a newer school. That's probably 50% of the emails that I get are from parents from schools that have been around for decades, many, many decades, and they are eager for their students to be within a new building. And then the last point on here are some of the utilization challenges that we have. I'll just read a statistic here. Right now, we have fewer than 27% of our elementary and K through 8 schools, 33% of our middle schools, and 19% of our high schools at the optimal utilization range, which is 80 to 95% capacity. What does that mean? About a third of schools in each of our grade bands are under enrolled. Now, you heard me say that we had a population growth recently. So what does that mean if a third of the schools are under enrolled? That means that we have some schools that are over enrolled. So you can have schools that are just literally bursting at the seams next to schools that don't have enough students to fill their seats. So this is why the boundary initiative is so important, because it's going to give us this opportunity to really think critically about how do we reallocate student feeder patterns so that every child is in a school that is really comfortable for a comfortable learning environment for them to learn. I want to go back to this presentation real quickly, just to share with you a resource that you can access to think about how the boundaries will impact your school community. So if you go on the PGCPS website, you can check out the PGCPS boundary tool, and I'll also drop this in the chat, but here you can view the full report that this outside group has done about our boundary analysis. And then you can use this boundary tool here. Can you guys all see this? Can you see this here? Where you can put in a the scenario explorer. Hold on. Okay, you can put in your address. Let's just say you put in this address. Then it'll give you the scenarios of which high schools your children would go through under the different scenarios of what the boundaries could be. So this is a great tool that you can use. And let me make sure that I drop this in the chat as well. So you can access this and go here and play around with it based on where you live. Okay. All right, let me go back here a second. Right. You also can sign up for alerts. So there are alerts that come out around the boundary initiative, and I'll put that link here in the chat as well. I'm just going to copy that from my presentation. And that's one way that you can stay updated on what's happening. So let me just drop this in the chat as well. And this is a great way for you to know sort of what are the latest happenings with the boundary initiative. And so I wanted to open it up for any questions, but of course, I do want to just always say, if there's anything like a specific question related to your student or your school, please email me and I will do my best to find the answer for you. So that's the Boundary Alerts Initiative. You can sign up there. I dropped that in the chat. All right. So that's all for me.
Thank you so much for that. Are there any questions? I don't see any hands raised or anything in the chat. So I'll go ahead and ask the question. I'm curious to know, because there's a lot of new development in our district, a lot of new housing, coming. When we talk about this boundary initiative, are they considering the capacity that there will likely be with these new housing developments? Are they considering that in it? Because I feel like, those housing communities will be here in the next, 2 to 3 years, but we won't have another redistricting process for another 10 years. So what's going to happen?
Yeah, I would say that's definitely one of my biggest concerns, is around really the collaboration between parks and planning and the school system, and how we plan on, accommodating the fact that we have schools that are already over enrolled and we're putting more houses in those areas. And so something that, I plan to do is really try to advocate on behalf of community members that have reached out to me about my concerns around this, in terms of how we're going to support schools that are really bursting at the seams, and think about strategically where new schools can be built or where students can be rerouted. I think another thing that has to be taken into consideration is also travel times for students. I think right now there are students that are traveling far distances, and then, if schools are consolidated or moved, that can cause other students to have to travel long distances. So, I think that due to the fact that we have so many older buildings in our district and we're working through the process of rebuilding them and building new ones, I think that all of those factors converge into sort of how the planning happens into where schools should be. But I do think that, there needs to be a lot of collaboration and communication across those agencies, to really think about how can we be purposeful.
Thank you. Are there any other questions?
Yes, Councilwoman Freed, Councilman Herring again. Yes, I'd like to ask this question. If the whole premise of the census is to allocate resources equally across the board, how do we stop Prince George's County school system from doing what they did before, where they probably looked at the census and said our district needed more resources. They poured the resources into our district, all into Glen Arden Woods Elementary School, $22 million, took our kids out of the school, made it a tag school, and did not give additional resources to a Title I school, Sylvania Woods Elementary School, which is in great need of resources. So it looks like they played the shell game. They put the resources in the district that is lacking, but the resource didn't go to the students that needed it. It went to students who basically are achieving higher than our kids that are going to Sylvania Woods. So how are you as our representative going to basically stop that from happening? Because I think it was terrible what happened with Glen Arden Woods and with our students in our district.
Yeah, so I definitely have an email drafted. I wanted to hear some more thoughts from this meeting before I sent it to Dr. Goldson, but I'd really love to sit down with her to sort of talk about sort of what has happened here in the Glen Arden community with the creation of Glen Arden Woods as a specialty school, as opposed to like a program within a school. And I want to note that I think it's important to also just add into that conversation that Judge Sylvania Woods is a community school. And so being a community school, they do receive a lot of supports and they have like a different budget. They have access to many, many, many like resources that other schools don't have access to. So I am not sure necessarily if that was to compensate for some of the shifting there, but it is based on the income levels of students and parents that attend that school, to provide them with additional supports. So I definitely plan to research and get more information, and I can certainly report it back to this group.
Can I follow up on that? The reason why they got that additional support was because of the incident that happened up at the school. Before that, I had been at that school over and over again, trying to get an extra counselor up there. For 790 kids, they had one counselor. So the incident that happened, they dumped in. I mean, it's sad that that's the only way they got the additional support is because, the children got molested. But and it shouldn't come to that. It should come to the need. The children need additional resources up there, and it seems like they're being neglected. And basically, that's what I was kind of told, and that's what I was kind of mentioned to me when I went down to the school board before to talk to them about this situation. So, like I said, as our representative, we can take it to Dr. Golston, but she needs to come out here and meet with the citizens and explain it to us ourselves.
Yeah, I was gonna say maybe we should set up like a community meeting, and that could be part of my email to her, basically suggesting that she come and do a community meeting with this community. But then also, I think that you should come and speak at the OBAFA committee. I think that you should come and possibly, share some of the concerns that you have, and that is a great vehicle for any citizen to, make their concerns heard about how funding, this is, your taxpaying dollars, how they're allocated and spent, specifically as it comes to schools in your community. And so I can certainly share with you the information on that as well. So I'd love to follow up with you on that.
Okay, please do.
Mhm.
All right, thank you.
Ms. Smallwood?
Yes, I got 2 questions. My first question is, how many new schools is Prince George's County building?
So we have the 6 schools that are part of the Blueprint schools. And then within the capital improvement projects, there are other schools that are being renovated or rebuilt through like the regular process. I believe there's
Okay.
6.
Now back to Sylvania Woods. It is my understanding that a majority of the students that's coming into Sylvania Wood is coming from Highfield and Mount Rainier. Is that a true assessment?
I don't know that for sure, but that's something I can follow up on.
Okay, can you do that? Because I was with Councilman Herman. We went down to the school board and we was trying to get them to make some changes and we got nowhere.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. Yes, I'm putting my information down. I just put my email in the chat. So maybe we could have a meeting, you and Mr. Herring and myself, and we could plan to have a town hall, maybe a community meeting with Dr. Goldson or someone from her staff that can talk a little bit more about this particular school and the questions and concerns.
That would be fine.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
If you want to share with me your email, that would be great.
Okay, I put it in the chat.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions? Okay, so thank you so much for joining, everyone. Again, thank you to our distinguished panel. This has been a very informative event. It's just scratching the surface. So if anyone is interested in knowing more details about Maryland redistricting efforts or the county's redistricting efforts or the school board's redistricting efforts, you have your contact people here. We will be sending out these slides to those who registered for the event, because then I have your email. If you did not register for the event, please send me an email. I will also put my email here so that I can make sure that you receive the materials as well. But that's e4read@cityofglenarden.org. Okay, thank you everyone for your time and enjoy the rest of your evening.